In a previous video, we've created our query class, and in this one, we are going to create a set of the subquery classes. Under the subquery directory, let's create the new one called pivot. And within this pivot directory, we are going to create a new class called pivot as well. And it's going to be within app, database, statement, subquery, and then pivot namespace. This class is going to be an abstract class, so let's quickly put the abstract keyword before the class. Let's remove this redundant space here, and it will implement the subquery interface, which, if we open this subquery class here, requires any class that implements it to have this query method. So let's quickly add this method here. Public function query, and we are going to leave it like this for the time being because there are a few things that we need to add before that. We start with the protected property table. It's going to be of a string type. Then we are going to have protected property select underscore field, also string. Then protected property where underscore field, also of a string type. And if I just create a few new lines, and then we're going to have protected property operand. By default, it's going to be equal symbol. And that's going to be of a string type as well, obviously. Okay, then we have a constructor, so now constructor, and we are going to get table select and where properties, basically the arguments to associate with our properties. So we have table select field, where field, and then we obviously associating values with the properties. From within the constructor, the next method we're going to create is going to be protected function statement. Let me just close the browser on the left, and this statement will simply return the SQL statement using our properties. We start with a select, and then we have this select field. Let's put the backticks around these curly brackets here as well. You don't have to use them, but I think it looks a little bit better this way. Then from, and again, backticks, curly brackets, this table. And then we have where statement, backticks, curly brackets, this where field, space, and again, and this time without the backticks because here we're going to have operand. So this operand, and then space and question mark, the placeholder for the value, for the prepared statement, obviously. Okay, so that's our statement, and this is just the basic statement. Some of the classes that will extend this abstract class will add to the statement. That's why we have it as a statement, because from within the query, we're only going to return the statement. And let's just quickly add the dog blocks here. It returns string, and it's just common SQL statement. And then for the query, let's just return this statement. And let's add dog block, return string as well, and get query string for a pivot table. And I think that's everything. I'm just going to remove this redundant lines at the end of the class. So that's our pivot class, abstract class completed. Let's now open the file browser, and within the pivot directory, we're going to add another class called pivot equals. So pivot equals, and this one will extend our pivot class, but we will not add anything else. Pivot this class is called pivot equals because it uses the equal symbol for the operand. And as you may remember, by default, the operand is set to equal. So we don't have to overwrite anything. We just inherit all the functionality of this pivot class. Now, after this pivot equals, we are going to create another subdirectory under this pivot directory. We're going to call it exist. And we're going to have set of classes here. We're going to start with the first one, which is going to be called pivot exists, and it's within app, then database, then statement, then subquery, then pivot, and then exists namespace. There we go. And this one will also extend pivot, but it will be an abstract class as well. And this class will start with the protected property alter field. And I'll show you in just a moment what this field is going to be used for. Then we're going to have a constructor. Constructor will take this alter field and it will instantiate it, but before this it will take a table, same as the previous class we've been working on, then select field, then where field, and let's just add this to the doc block, update doc block, there we go. And I'm going to put them on each one on new line so we can see it a little bit better. And then what we're going to do first, rather than instantiating this auto field, we're going to call parent constructor, and we pass these arguments through. So table, select field, and then where field. Because we obviously extending this pivot table, and this pivot table takes these three arguments to its constructor. Okay, so we've instantiated the constructor of the parent, then we've instantiated this auto field. And the next thing we need to do is to create the query method, public function query, which is going to override the one that's on the pivot table. And we are going to start with return this statement, the statement that is within the pivot class. If we go back, you can see this is just a basic statement. Select field from table, where field, operand, and then question mark. And this alter field now is going to be used to add the end statement. So end, then backticks this select field equals this alter field. And I didn't put the backticks around this alter field because what I want to do first here, when I associate this value passed through as an argument directly with the property, what I need to do is to first work out what this field should actually be. Because what this field might be passed through as an argument is either, say, books.id. It may also be just the field name without the table name, and so on. So I need to make sure that obviously I've got it correctly sorted before we actually add it to the statement. So before we do anything, let's create a quick test for the new class that we're going to add. It's going to be under database. Under database, we are going to add a new directory called statement. And within the statement directory, we're going to create the field test. Let's extend test case. And what I'm going to start with is public function returns formatted field name. Let's add the test stack. And we're going to start with the assertion. This assert equals, and what we expect this to return is going to be in between a backticks just a name. When we are going to run field name, and then pass through name as an argument, as a string. Otherwise, we're going to return the message incorrectly formatted name. And obviously, if we were to run it now, we know this class does not exist. So let's just quickly create it. We're going to create it directly under the statement directory. So PHP class field.php is going to be under app, then database, then statement, namespace, It's all fine. Let's remove this redundant space here, and it's going to be a static public function, so public static function called field name. We take field name as an argument, so field argument, and then we are going to create the variable table underscore field equals, we use explode function. We're going to be exploding using a full stop this field name, and we only want 2 items. So if there's more than one full stop, whatever's remaining after the second item, just append to the second item. Okay, so now we check if count table field triple equal 1, then we know there's only one item. There was no full stop, like with this test that we've created here. We only pass name without any full stops, so we can simply return in between a double quotes and in between a backticks. Let's just do rather than this, it's just the field name, so field this way, because we know obviously there's just a single string without any full stops there. And otherwise we're going to return, and we're going to use double quotes, then backticks, curly brackets. It's going to be table field at index 0, which is going to return the table name, and then we're going to concatenate it right after, again set of backticks, and then between it curly brackets table field at index 1, which will contain the table the field name, and then semicolon at the end. So basically this could potentially have something like books ID. This could potentially return something like that. Okay, so that's our method. Let's quickly add dog block. Field is going to be of a string type, and then we're going to say get correct field name, including table name, or get correct. Yeah, let's keep it like this. Okay, now we can run the test. And if we run just this field test, so PHP unit tests, let's navigate the unit, then database statement, then we have field test, and we have a problem here, class field not found. This is because we haven't actually imported this class yet. So let's import this class using this use statement, obviously pointing to the class by its namespace. Now if we go back, run it again, and we have one test, one assertion, which are passing. Okay, let's go back to our editor. We haven't finished quite with our test yet. Let's try another scenario. So this assert equals, this time I expect this to return in between the backticks books, then concatenate it with ID. That's what I expect to get when I run field name, and I pass through books full stop ID. If it fails, then incorrectly formatted, and I'm going to put books ID, and let's actually change this name here as well at the backticks to indicate what we were expecting actually. Okay, if we save it now, run the test, one test, two assertions, great, that's what we're expecting. Now let's duplicate this last assertion, and this is going to be last third assertion here. This time what I expect it to return is going to be first full stop name when we pass through books, first full stop name. As you may remember, if we go back to the field class, we said that we only want 2 items, and whatever's left is going to be appended to the second item in this array after exploding. So this is exactly the scenario that we're testing for now. We have 2 full stops, so if we were to explode using this full stop, then we would have first item in the array, then the second item in the array, and because we put in the third argument indicating that we only want 2 items, that whatever else is there, even if there is a full stop, just append to the second item, so that would return this. So in that case, we have the first item in between the backticks, concatenated with a full stop, and then whatever else has been left, again, in between the backticks. And let's just make sure that we obviously get the same format in the message here. So first full stop name. Let's see if that's evaluating to true when we test it. And there we go. That's also passing. So we're all good with this class. Let's close this field test. Let's close the field. We can close this pivot class as well. Now back to our pivot exists class. We are pretty much done here, apart from the fact that we need to now apply this field and then field name method to this auto field argument before we associate it with this property. So now we know that obviously this auto field will have its backticks depending on what we actually pass through as an argument. Okay, let's add the doc block here as well. And it's going to return a string, then get query string for a pivot table. And that's our pivot exists abstract class completed, so we can save it and close it. The next two classes that we are going to create will be called, and they will be stored under the subquery pivot exists directory. The first one is going to be called pivot exists equals, and it will extend this extends pivot exists, and we're not going to add anything to this one at all, because if we click on this pivot exists and then on the pivot, you'll see again that this operand has equal symbol associated with it. That's all we need for this pivot exist to actually do what we need this to do. This pivot exists equals. That's why equals here. And the next class we're going to create here is going to be called pivot exists in. This one will also extend pivot exists class, but we are going to override this protected operand, this time with the keyword in capitals. You don't have to use capitals, but I just tend to use capitals for all these SQL keywords. Okay, and that's everything that this class requires. So we can also save it and close it, and we are now ready to move to the next video.